This course provides a working set of analysis data files, meshes, contour plots, and time histories to demonstrate the use of FLAC3D to conduct an advanced three-dimensional seismic analysis of a zoned embankment dam with rock abutments. This video is intended for experienced geotechnical analysts with significant familiarity with FLAC2D, FLAC3D, or previous versions of FLAC, such as FLAC 8.1. Part 1 of this video is a formal presentation of the modeling approach, material properties, and analysis steps. In Part 2, a more informal commentary of the FLAC3D project will be provided. Note that although all data files are presented in this course and the overall structure discussed, the reason behind specific modeling and scripting decisions, a critical aspect in an analysis, are missing and outside the scope and time allowed. To better understand such critical modeling decisions, additional resources should be sought. For example, one great resource is Itasca's help and support website found at itascasoftware.com/support/. Let us now begin with Part 1, in which a formal description of the problem analyzed is given. The problem analyzed is that of a zoned embankment dam 50 meters in height with a 3:1 upstream slope and a 2.5:1 downstream slope. The reservoir level to be modeled is 2 meters below the crest. The pervious cohesive core extends down to the bedrock, where the shells are underlain by a 4-meter layer of cohesionless alluvium. The alluvium width at the surface is 30 meters. The rock abutment rises from the canyon base at a 1:1 slope. The numerical mesh developed is shown and was developed using Rhino 3D and Griddle 2.0. The numerical mesh has 157,611 numerical zones and was designed to accurately model wave propagation and other consideration. We now shift to discuss the constitutive modeling parameters used, material parameters selected, and overall analysis sequence. First, we begin by describing the soil constitutive models used during the earthquake analysis. In the embankment material, the Moore-Coulomb model is used to capture soil yielding in either drained or undrained conditions. In the alluvium, the P2P sand effective stress model is used to capture the expected changes in excess pore water pressure during earthquake shaking and the associated reduction in stiffness, strength, and accumulated strains. The isotropic elastic model is used in the stiff bedrock material. Maximal damping will be used to primarily capture damping in the embankment materials in bedrock. General material property parameters used in the model are shown here for the shell, core, alluvium, and bedrock. Parameters listed include moist unit weight, saturated unit weight, shear wave velocity of vertical effective stress of 1 atmosphere, exponential component M that allows the shear wave velocity to vary with the vertical effective stress, drain-Poisson's ratio. More modeling specific parameters are presented next. The shell material is modeled to behave drain during earthquake shaking. The drain shear strength is selected to relate only to a drain friction angle representative of a gravelly shell that varies with minimum principal effective stress as shown. The associated drain shear strength assigned in the model is calculated using the equation shown. Note that this shear strength S will be equal to the cohesion parameter in the Moore-Coulomb model and will be calculated zone by zone based on the pre-earthquake state of stress. Correspondingly, the friction angle parameter in the Moore-Coulomb model is set to 0. The equation shown here represents the radius of the Moore circle at the initial yield, that is the red circle, with the elastic response under simple shear loading with shear stress SA, a state of stress slightly lower than that which indicates the impacts of principal stress rotation. During earthquake loading, the core material is modeled to behave drained above the phreatic surface and undrained below the phreatic surface. The drain shear strength is a function of the drain friction angle and cohesion, whereas the undrained shear strength is a function of the undrained shear strength ratio, which is a function of the effective vertical stress. The drain shear strength of the core material is provided here. The value of S represents the radius of the Moore circle at the initial yield with the elastic response under simple shear loading. The undrained shear strength of the core is S equals the undrained strength divided by the vertical effective stress times the vertical effective stress. Note that the shear strength S will be equal to the cohesion parameter in the Moore-Coulomb model and would be calculated zone by zone based on the pre-earthquake state of stress. Correspondingly, the friction angle parameter in the Moore-Coulomb model is set to 0. In the alluvium, changes in excess pore water pressure during earthquake shaking will be modeled as well as the associated reduction in stiffness, strength, and accumulated strains. The alluvium will be modeled as a medium-dense sandy soil with a density representative of a normalized standard penetration resistance N160 equal to 16. The P2P sand model will be used to model the cyclic mobility liquefaction response during shaking. The primary material parameter for the P2P sand constitutive model is the initial relative density, which will be estimated as 0.59 using the equation shown with the N160 of 16. The residual shear strength is not a material parameter in the P2P sand model, but is used in the post-earthquake analysis with the Moore-Coulomb model. At this N160, the associated residual strength ratio will be set equal to 0.14. The analysis sequence is composed of 10 analysis steps, each representative of a separate data file. In the first analysis step, geostatic stresses are calculated without the impacts of the reservoir. A simple modeling approach is used where the mechanical equilibrium is determined for the whole model with drain strengths in the more cooler model. More complex modeling approaches can be implemented if desired. The second analysis step checks the ratio of the horizontal to vertical effective stress, and adjustments are attempted if unrealistic values are found. The third analysis step calculates the impacts of the reservoir on the model. In this data file, a seepage analysis is conducted to determine the pore water pressures, and then the effective stresses are updated with the reservoir surcharge and newly calculated pore water pressures. Next, in the fourth analysis, the ratio of the horizontal to vertical effective stress is checked once again, and adjustments are attempted if unrealistic values are found. Next, starting in the fifth analysis step, the model conditions are transitioned from the dynamic analysis. In this fifth analysis step, constitutive model parameters are updated for the dynamic analysis, for example, using undrained shear strength parameters where appropriate, as well as changing constitutive models, for example, switching from the more cooler model to the P2P sand model in the medium dense alluvial sand. Following these changes, mechanical equilibrium of the model is reestablished. Next up, in the sixth analysis step, the ratio of the horizontal to vertical effective stresses is checked again, and adjustments are attempted if unrealistic values are found. In the seventh analysis step, the boundary conditions and damping characteristics of the model are changed, certain constitutive model parameters updated, and time history stored. The eighth analysis step corresponds to the actual analysis step in which the dynamic response with the earthquake motions is determined. Following completion of the earthquake analysis, a post-processing data file exports time histories and forms customized internal calculations. In the final analysis step, a post-earthquake analysis is conducted in which additional gravity-driven deformations accumulated are determined if portions of the alluvium reach the residual shear strength. This completes the formal description of the problem analyzed. Now in part 2, a more informal commentary of the FLAC3D project is provided. It is now time to open the FLAC3D project and explore all the related contents. To begin is the main file, which contains a call of all of the main analysis files that were discussed in the first part of this video. What you will now see is the main mesh. We now focus on the first analysis, calculating the static equilibrium. Note in this part, there has been some changes done to the model. In particular, at the toe of the dam, as well as the boundary, different group names have been specified here. This was because bad geometry was being obtained for certain seismic analyses, and the properties for these zones changed. The approach to specify all the properties is shown here. In these cases, extra grid variables are used. The benefit of such an approach is that the properties discussed in this first part of the video can be inputted in directly, and then subsequent calculations can be conducted within FLAC. All of the extra grid variables used are shown in the README file. Scrolling through, you'll see boundary conditions, key things setting saturation as 0 for the dry embankment, and here is the main function with many local variables that assigns the properties zone by zone based on the effective stresses and other parameters. This function is then executed using a ratio of the horizontal to vertical stress of 0.5, and then is solved based on the improved state of stress. The properties are updated again, and the model is solved again. There are several additional extra grid variables that will be useful for tracking throughout the analysis, and these are calculated here, and you can see everything is saved in 0-1 static analysis. Here are the saved results. The two densities that are useful: shear wave velocity, shear modulus, bulk modulus, maximum frequency that can be passed, shear strength based on drain strengths, vertical effective stress, horizontal effective stress, shear stress, ratio of the horizontal to vertical effective stress. These are simple models, and so it's possible that the range of the horizontal to vertical effective stresses is outside range desired, and so a function has been created here to adjust the horizontal effective stress if so needed. We then compare the ratio of the horizontal to vertical effective stresses before and after. You can see that it has had a small impact. Now for the seepage analysis. Anisotropic permeabilities have been specified. Other variables have been assigned for ease of later assignments in the code. Boundary conditions are specified. Seepage analysis will not be conducted through the bedrock. Steady-state seepage is conducted. Next, the following calculation of pore pressures. You see now that we now add the mechanical surcharge, solve for equilibrium again, and update the stresses. The set of extra grid variables are updated again. Opening the save state. And now looking at pore pressures, degree of saturation, changes in effective stress due to the reservoir, and well as the changes in pore pressure. We then check the ratio of the horizontal to vertical effective stress again and change as needed. Changes are very small. Next is an important analysis step, which is converting to the constitutive models and or parameters that are going to be used in the dynamic analysis. In terms of the Moore-Coulomb model, strengths are specified as described in part 1 of this video, the code being highlighted here. P2P sand model, as another example, much simpler. Key thing to specify the initial stresses, as shown in that script. All the parameters have been specified here. To avoid bad geometry in the toe and the boundary, simpler models have been used with larger strengths. Changes in properties such as stresses are small with these different constitutive models. We then check K0 one last time. Stresses being changed are slight. Now is the step where we set the model up for dynamic analysis. This is where we specify Maxwell damping, 5% being used for the materials in the embankment with the Moore-Coulomb model, much smaller for others. We also specify here a real bulk modulus of the fluid for the alluvium. Also important, turning pore pressure generation on and re-zeroing the displacements and the velocities, as well as the state for the Moore-Coulomb model. Turn large strain on. Additional extra grid variables have been created for the dynamic analysis, those being excess pore water pressure ratio, engineering shear strain, the dynamic time step used for the different grid points. Here are histories at key locations, including some customized histories for excess pore water pressure ratio. Here are the histories shown. Now for the actual analysis. First, we upload the time histories. Those will be shown in a moment. We then specify those time histories. We're using a compliant base approach. So the factors multiplied going from velocity to stress are shown here and highlighted. Quiet boundaries and free field. And then we conduct the analysis for the duration of the earthquake record. Here are the results. First, here's the acceleration, velocity, and displacement time history. Only the velocity time history is used. That was in the horizontal and the vertical direction. Here you see the velocity specified and then the velocity calculated at the base for both the horizontal and vertical directions. Here's the distribution of maximum shear strain, showing areas of high shear strain Key aspect here, excess pore pressure. This is the maximum excess pore pressure during shaking. Displacements in the horizontal direction. And the vertical direction. Displacement time history at the crest versus the base. Focusing on these histories, we then have other key parameters here being shear strain as well as the excess pore water pressure ratio. Stress strain for a location in the core and upstream and downstream shell. And here is the alluvium, including both the stress path as well as the stress strain relationship. And here is the dynamic time step at the grid points. Often, there may be some additional post-processing. I include here a calculation maximum principal strain, which could also, for this case, had been a plot by itself without the use of this extra grid variable. Also, data could be exported using the script utilized here. Here is the plot of the distribution in the maximum principal strain. Now for the post-quake analysis, various approaches could be used. The one utilized here is to search through the model for zones in the alluvium with an excess pore pressure ratio in excess of 0.7, noting those regions, storing that in a text file, and then going back to the stage before the earthquake, the simpler state of stress, specifying strengths in all the materials, and then loading the file that has stored zones that have so-called liquefied, and then specifying a residual shear strength in those particular zones. This is done a few different ways. The first is a so-called static analysis in which local damping is used. These are the zones that are converted, and so along the toe you see you have post-earthquake deformations that could be expected if that residual strength could occur. These would be in addition to the deformations in the dynamic analysis, the timing of which is difficult to determine. Now, because there is local damping, inertial effects are artificially reduced, and so it is also beneficial and advantageous to run this analysis using a dynamic analysis in which local damping is not used, but in this case, stiffness proportional Rayleigh damping. The last is factor safety. Factor safety is calculated. The model here and the other two are essentially the same. The value of factor safety is stored in a fish variable, the value for which is shown here, and the associated slip surface or area of high deformations are shown. This completes part 2, a more informal commentary of the FLAC3D project. To better understand such critical modeling decisions, additional resources should be sought. For example, one great resource is Itasca's help and support website found at itascasoftware.com/support/. Thank you.